If you were ever wondering why do European companies buy so few startups, we found two guys who know the exact answer to that. Let's give a warm welcome to Saba Karim, the Global Startup Pipeline Manager at Techstars EU, and Paolo Privitera, the CEO of Evensi.
Yes.
Okay.
You hear me clearly?
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session on why European companies aren't buying as many startups. And I'm joined here today with this awesome founder, Paolo, who's got some good news to share, which is a very big coincidence. Before he goes in and introduce himself, just for context, my name is Saba Karim. I'm the Global Startup Pipeline Manager at Techstars, based out of Denver. My job is to source startups across the world for all of our accelerators. And so I had the pleasure of going through Techstars Boston a few years ago, and we were acquired by HubSpot. So over to you. Why don't you give your intro?
Absolutely. Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm going to start from the very, very end. Today is a very important day for me because literally we just signed the acquisition of my last company, Evensi. I cannot share publicly the name of the acquirer. I can tell you that it's a very known events company in California. This is what I can tell. COVID didn't help. We were supposed to IPO in April 2020. So we were supposed to go public. COVID had different plans, but we managed to find different solutions. And we have an amazing acquirer. We're really happy. It was not easy. It was the most difficult thing I've done business-wise in my life. I'm going to give you some context in briefly. I'm Italian, born and raised in Venice. And by the way, today I am exceptionally in Venice, my hometown. I live in San Francisco. I've been there for the last 18 years. I started my first tech company in Italy in 1994 when I was 16 years old. And since then, I built from scratch 6 companies. I co-founded and about 12 companies. In total, 4 of my 6 companies had an exit, including the one today. And I invested in about more than 50 companies and a few funds. And I raised overall $50 million across my last few companies, to give you some context. And in specific, connecting to the topic we're talking today, I specialized the last few years in M&A cross-border between US and Europe. So I can talk for facts.
I love that. Congratulations for your 4 out of 6. That's amazing. So just for some context, right? So what we know is that Europe doesn't necessarily have fewer large companies than the US. In fact, Europe has 3 times more companies that have about 250 people or more than the US does. And so talk from experience. Why did you get your company acquired, or why was it that an American company bought yours and not a company from Europe? Or would you have seen another European company having done this instead?
Absolutely. No. So first of all, the company that I sold is a US-based company.
Yeah.
So even though we do have a big Italian team and a big Italian office, we also have people in Argentina and Australia. But the legal headquarters where the assets are is US. And this is key to actually the conversation we're having. So there is not, this is my opinion, but there is not a single answer to the question. I believe we need to have a very holistic approach. And me being European, but living for the last almost 20 years in the US, I believe I can see both worlds, and I believe I have my own context to provide. So I have a few ideas. I believe one of them is cultural. I believe in Europe, still today, I talk to founders every day, even companies that I would have acquired or I would have an acquirer to acquire them. And very often the answer that I have is, oh no, I don't want to sell. I want to work here forever. I want to grow it. But as we know, this is not how the VC world works. meaning that it's going to be very difficult for investors to invest in a company knowing in advance that the founder is not ready to sell anytime. And so this doesn't help. So there is a clear cultural issue, and it's tough sometimes to have these conversations. Maybe less as such into companies or people or startups or cities where people are more, I would say, Silicon Valley mindset kind of connected, like maybe London, maybe Milan, maybe big cities. So this is one approach: culture of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, not ready to sell your company. Another key point, and I can talk for a fact, there is too much bureaucracy in Europe. It's so complicated. When you want to acquire a company, you need to go through a lot of mess that we don't have in the US. Too many local laws that also involve hiding and fighting. Believe me, out of the 6 companies created from scratch and the 12 I co-created other people, I had about, I believe, 6 or 7 shield companies in Italy and Europe, specifically Italy. It's a nightmare. And believe me, I speak Italian, so I can even, imagine an acquirer that don't even speak Italian, then you need to deal with Italian companies. So, but I'm bilingual, actually trilingual. I speak Italian, I can understand the local laws. And even for me, when I'm in a situation of considering even to invest or to acquire Italian companies, I don't want to do that. Technically, I'm already thinking like, an American investor. I don't want to do that. So what I do, I ask the company to open a shield company in the US, move the IP there, move the assets, create a structure where the US company becomes the headquarter. Eventually, they do a reverse takeover. The European company get acquired by American one. They manage the team through the Italian entity. And then I feel more, ready and prone to deal with the US entity and invest there and acquire the company as soon as it's the US ground. So a lot of my second point to the question is bureaucracy. Bureaucracy doesn't help. Reversely, there is also another angle. In California specifically, there is this beautiful anti-non-competition law that allows pretty much everybody to compete with everybody, even if you sign a non-compete agreement that, as you may be aware, is not enforceable in court. So that would help. Something related to the hiring and the recruiting. Technically, you can recruit from competitors, meaning that, as we know, innovation comes also from copying what other people are doing. So very often, I know it's very incestuous sometimes, but having this flow of people that the very, very fast turnover, you can hire and fire super easily. There is not, you're even protected regarding the the non-competition law. So it's kind of it's more wild, but it helps. It helps the overall flow of people and talents. And this is also another issue in Europe. So if we compare that to Europe, the local laws for hiring are still crazy. I know for certain Italy, France, and Spain are maybe the worst, because once you hire somebody, technically you cannot fire the person and unless the person has committed some extreme crime. And so, please, you have I thought you were stopping me, sorry.
No. Finish that thought and then I'll get a question for you, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So even the laws for recruiting sound scary for international acquirers, because you enter a different situation where you're dealing with people that it's not easy to manage in that sense. And then there is another angle. There is another type of cultural issue that it relates to maybe cultural conservation in a way. European acquirers, so not talking about US acquiring European companies, I'm talking about European acquirers. it's never easy to talk about acquiring other people from another company. So acquire companies, and it's mainly related to culture and how Europe evolved. And there are cases, I need to say, that actually protected companies and created a safety shield. For example, I can give you an example very basic. The retention of European employees is way higher than an average US company. People that are in love with a specific company, they may have been employed for a few years. If they like the CEO and the culture and the environment, they never leave. They don't look for another job, even if they get paid more. So this still relates to a cultural thing. And all these pieces that I mentioned, they don't help the M&A in Europe. Another piece that is actually, generally speaking, the number one, but people think is the cause, but actually is an effect, meaning is a vicious circle, because if you don't have enough acquisitions and exits, you have less and less venture capital willing to invest in these companies. And if you have that venture capital, technically there are less money around, meaning companies are underfunded. And if you are underfunded, there are situations where they are less appealing because they haven't grown as much. So technically is a vicious circle where for every technically point of the circle, you have negative variables that are not helping the circle to go through. So in a way, Silicon Valley is doing better and better and better, and specifically are doing worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. No, they're all very good points. You obviously know this very well. We flip the table a little bit. Like, what could the US learn from what Europe and European companies are doing well, from your perspective as well?
Good question. I believe I kind of mentioned it before. I believe companies here in Europe are doing really well with employees retention. It's not based just on jumping on the next thing and making more money, but they created a culture of strong ethics. There is a strong ethical between people here. People are not trying to rip the company off. They are overall very respectful. There is a clear love relationship with the same company ecosystem within the company, meaning that, I don't know, there is a stronger liaison between people and the company. So this is, I believe, one angle. Another approach is even the salary compensations. When you are in a payroll in Italy or in Europe, well, technically you are somehow protected by the government. And even though I've never been an employee in my life, so I've always been an entrepreneur, so I'm not the one chasing jobs because I finally have a steady salary. This is not me at all, but a lot of people do. And this helps creating kind of a stable company engagement with employees and hiring, and actually very little fighting. So in a way, they're doing better. In the other way, they're doing much worse because companies have more issues to fire people. So it's hard to give you an answer to that, because actually I don't like how we manage things in Europe.
Yeah.
In that regard, specifically.
In which one? Oh, Italian companies. Okay.
In that regard, yeah.
So you mentioned a bunch of reasons why European companies aren't doing so, and so laws, bureaucracy, culture issues a little bit. I guess how let's just say someone from Spotify, UiPath, these big companies in made in Europe. What advice do you give them to or the next ones that are popping up to be those Spotifys and UiPath? What do you want them to hear if they're listening to it and the message goes out to them to change this, right? Because I think the goal is it happens better in the US, especially with Cisco acquires a company every 6 or 7 weeks or something like that. It's crazy. So what would you say to anyone listening from those organizations in Europe to be like, please consider up here?
I would say that generally speaking, this is a very broad general advice. I really, really, really believe that we live in a liquid world. We live really in a global ecosystem. I wouldn't. This is me. Maybe this is too naive, but this is how I try to make things happen. I don't really see. Say it again.
30 seconds till we wrap up.
Yeah, no, I believe we are really live in a global world. So my statement would be, don't consider just to acquire in Europe and US. Think that we are global and think that a startup in Australia, Europe, in Italy, US, in South America are all the same. And you can work out through international laws and very smart M&A to make M&A happen in the same way that would happen in the US.
Yeah, I love that advice. Well, thank you so much. Congratulations, and good luck with the next part of your adventure. We'll look out for the So thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.